What happens when an enemy launches hundreds of drones against civilians rather than soldiers? Do you negotiate? Do you retreat? Or do you unleash something so overwhelming that the aggressor's entire Western front collapses? That's the question Kyiv and Washington faced on August 20th. Their answer came in the form of Operation Iron Thunder, a full-spectrum counterstrike that didn't simply retaliate, it rewrote the strategic map. By sunrise, Russia's supply lines, bombers, and radar were in ruins. The question now is, what was so destructive about this plan that it crippled Russia in a single night? Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. When missiles fall on neighborhoods instead of military bases, what follows shifts from tragedy to inevitability. August 20th began with the sound of distant explosions that grew into a relentless assault. Across multiple Ukrainian cities, 574 kamikaze drones buzzed over rooftops, followed by 40 ballistic missiles striking in waves. Targets weren't command outposts, air defense batteries, or ammunition storage. They were clustered apartment blocks, crowded streets, and a string of schools in session that morning. Windows splintered under the shockwaves. Entire stairwells collapsed, and classrooms filled with smoke before children could even reach the hallways. By the time the sirens stopped, dozens lay under rubble, and entire neighborhoods looked like they had been erased. Moscow called the barrage a response to provocation, presenting it as if the campaign struck legitimate military infrastructure. But footage from survivors told an entirely different story. Streets were littered with twisted bicycles, school books soaked in ash, and half-charred dolls pulled from classrooms. A child's pencil case sat in a crater 3 meters wide, proof of where at least one missile detonated. Firefighters moved between burning buildings, with sirens still echoing from the last blast. Mothers searched frantic faces, screaming names into the haze. One stood outside a collapsed school wing, clutching a blood-soaked notebook, calling for a daughter who had never made it out. Each detail contradicted claims of precise strikes or limited retaliation. What unfolded looked less like a military operation and more like a campaign of terror. The human cost extended across borders. Among the wounded in the smoldering aftermath were 5 American civilians. They weren't contractors or soldiers. They were families of aid workers and engineers caught in their apartments when drones hit. Images of U.S. citizens pulled from shattered staircases sent shockwaves far beyond Kyiv. It wasn't only Ukraine sifting through ruins now. Washington had been pulled in directly. No diplomatic gloss could conceal American injuries caused by deliberate civilian strikes. And for policymakers in the U.S., the line had been crossed in plain view of cameras. Within hours of the attack, encrypted channels connected Washington to Kyiv. The call carried urgency, not with drawn-out negotiation, but with a rapid alignment of intent. On one end sat Kyiv's wartime president, drained yet unshaken, framing the moment as survival. On the other stood America's leader, facing pressure at home after watching compatriots struck in their own apartments abroad. Questions loomed for only minutes. Would this mirror other crises where restraint masked outrage? Would talks about peace corridors buy Moscow more time? Or would this spiral beyond anything seen in 2 years of war? The answer came quickly. Their tones aligned in certainty. There would be no pause, no concession, and no retreat. The joint declaration inside that line boiled down to a single choice: overwhelming counterfire. The signal was unmistakable. What had been a defensive alliance preparing shipments and training advisories was now pivoting into escalation. By midnight, planners had drafted the framework of an operation so concentrated it promised to dismantle Russian capabilities in a single night. That campaign had a name whispered in high chambers before it reached headlines: Operation Iron Thunder, and by morning, Russia would face fire on a scale not seen since the Cold War era. Retaliation isn't always about striking back with equal force. Sometimes it is designed to erase capabilities so completely that recovery becomes impossible. That was the idea behind Operation Iron Thunder, the coordinated response planned in Washington and executed across multiple fronts. Unlike limited counterstrikes designed to weaken an opponent, this operation had one goal: decapitate Russia's command systems, cripple its logistics network, and wound its ability to fight wars deep inside Ukrainian territory. In a single night, the balance of power was set to shift, not through gradual attrition, but through a calculated strike designed to leave Moscow unable to continue the campaign it had begun. The scale of such an operation raised a stark question. How could Ukraine, a country repeatedly painted as outmatched, project firepower past hundreds of miles of defended Russian airspace? Russian officials had long assumed geography acted as a shield. That depth offered protection against precision strikes on their soil. Yet Iron Thunder showed that assumption collapsing overnight. Ukraine's resilience, paired with American planning and support, turned impossible into operational. Still, it wasn't just foreign assistance that enabled the offensive. The linchpin was a domestic secret that had remained concealed for months under the most ordinary-looking locations. Beneath the streets of several Ukrainian cities lay underground drone hangars, hidden in basements of large civilian structures and disguised behind reinforced access gates. These hangars contained rows of long-range combat drones, maintained and fueled in silence, ready for synchronized release. On command, 1,200 drones climbed from concealed shafts, filling the sky in coordinated swarms. Their routes were mapped to overwhelm specific Russian radar and defense zones. Within minutes, Moscow's vaunted air defense grid was challenged in a way it had not anticipated. S-300s and S-400s batteries fired in frantic succession, launching thousands of interceptors that lit the horizon. Some drones fell, torn apart mid-flight, but too many continued forward, breaking into sub-swarms that scattered and regrouped mid-air. Tanks along rail depots erupted in fireballs, and supply trains were left burning across key junctions. The assault did not stop at drones. High above Russian territory, 20 B-21 stealth bombers slipped through radar detection, flying low and invisible to intercept screens. Their target was Engels Air Base, home to some of Russia's strategic long-range bombers. Hangars that had stored entire squadrons went up in flames under pinpoint precision strikes. Entire wings of bombers that once carried cruise missiles toward Ukraine no longer existed by dawn. The blow was not symbolic. It removed a core layer of Russia's ability to mount sustained aerial campaigns. Out at sea, the United States Navy joined the strike from concealed positions. 3 Virginia-class submarines operating in the Barents and Black Sea launched more than 120 Tomahawk cruise missiles. Dozens of Russian logistics hubs, from munitions warehouses to active railway offloading points, were struck in the same hour as the aerial bombardment. Each explosion dismantled not just structures, but also the timetable of Russia's supply chain. The interruption rippled across planned offensives, freezing heavy movements along entire sectors of the front. Overhead, squadrons of F-35 and F-22 fighters swept contested airspace. Their job was not limited to clearing the sky of Russian fighters. They disrupted battlefield communication across nearly 300 miles of occupied front lines. Jammed servers, blacked out radar, and silenced command relays meant even Russian ground units had no clear orders as fires broke out behind them. Within 6 hours of the operation's launch, Russia faced both tactical blindness and strategic paralysis. In the end, the breakthrough hinged on Ukraine's hidden hangars and the massive drone release. Without the simultaneous launch of 1,200 units, the other layers of the operation would not have struck so deeply or so quickly. This secret capacity flipped the dynamic completely, making the impossible possible. As the sun rose, smoke columns towered 25,000 feet into the sky over cities and bases across Russia, a new stage of consequences now unfolding in full view of the world. What message does Operation Iron Thunder send about deterrence in the modern world? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. One night of fire redrew the balance of power, reminding every aggressor that civilian targeting awakens forces far greater than they imagine.